All right, so JD, we're getting ready to inflate this airbag. Tell me some considerations about kick-out zones or hazard areas, things that you're looking for on the scene that you'd be telling your guys before we fill these.
Well, primarily, we don't want anyone directly in front of the bag. If we're lifting straight over here, we kind of want everybody kind of at a 45 away from it, just like if you're using a winch.
Yeah.
You want to be out of that zone just in case there's a kick out. Then primarily, we're going to get the bags in place, have someone there for cribbing. So as we lift, the cribbing is going to be going into place. Color-coded hoses for the reasons you said earlier. We may be in a position where the controller's out of our sight. So we need to be able to say, up on red, up on blue, whatever color hoses you're using. That's very important because he may not be able to see us.
Yeah.
And then as we decide we're ready to start the lift, then one person needs to communicate with that operator. We don't need 3 or 4 people talking to him. We need one person talking to him and making those commands for the lift.
Good. You know, another important thing, I think, JD, it's imperative that we express to you guys, when you're lifting with airbags, you really got to avoid long bursts or sudden bursts with the airbag systems or even with your pneumatic struts. We're looking for short controlled bursts that are given light inflations of air to that load so that load is moving in small increments. If we've got a load that's precarious and we start lifting and we give it a really long, extended, powerful burst of air, there's a good possibility that we can develop momentum shifts within the load that we lose the ability to control, and it's going to careen over in a direction that we didn't intend or plan. JD, let's go ahead and do this list and demonstrate that. Why don't you go ahead and be the boss? Give me some basic sequential commands, and I'll give this thing some short bursts of air as you tell me to.
Okay, we're going to make sure the cribbing guys are ready to go. Everything's in place. We don't want to be running back and forth getting cribbing. We need a stack of cribbing in the points where we're going to put them in place. It's always good to have a stack of wedges because you're going to need that point where if we're using 4x4s as we lift, we're going to reach that point where another 4x4 is not going to fit. So we need to slide that wedge in, and as we lift, eventually we'll get to the point where we can slide another 4x4 in, and then we're just going to keep repeating that. So on a true run, I'm in charge, you're my operator. I'm going to make sure everybody's in place. We've got people watching everything that we need to watch during this lift, all the way around whatever it is we're lifting, because we could have movement someplace that we're not expecting that we need to take care of. So basically we're in place. I'm going to say up on yellow. You're going to go up, you're going to make contact with the lift point where we're trying to match up to.
One of the important things you need to do before you go into the operating sequence as the operator and as the cribbing guys is to ensure that you're really ready for the commands that are going to be generated. So we start troubleshooting by ensuring that our valves are open and in line, that all our couplings are fully seated, and that we're ready to engage the operation. Once we've got that point, we'll check in with command and let them know we're ready to lift.
Okay, so my job at this point is to communicate with him, only me, with him. So we're in position. I'm going to say up on yellow.
Up on yellow.
Okay, as soon as we make contact, I'm going to tell him to hold.
Hold.
So once he does that, we're in contact. We make sure everything's where it needs to be. The cribbing and everything is in place, ready to go. And then we're going to start our lift. And like you said earlier, we're not going to do one continuous push and almost lift uncontrollably. We do not want to lift uncontrollably. We want to lift and make sure everyone's keeping up with us. And once we get to the point where whatever it is we're trying to free, an arm, a leg, a body, whatever it is, once they're free, cribbing's in place, we remove them. There's always a tendency to say, I can give you a little bit more. If I don't need a little bit more and I can get them out, we want to stop and pull them out. Because what normally can happen is as we lift and we're doing more than we need to, that's when something will happen. A piece of cribbing will kick out, something will happen that we don't want to happen. So when they're free, get them out of there. So he's in place. I'm going to tell him now, up on yellow.
Up on yellow.
And we're going to continue up until we get to the point, like I just said, they're free.
One of the unique things about these airbags we can demonstrate now that it's inflating is with pillow bags, we get some different characteristics. With pillow bags, when we start to really get those inflated, they become highly unstable. They have a tendency to want to kind of rock around a little bit. One of the unique things about the Rescue Tech airbags is they will find their center mass point and kind of articulate without losing their stability. So we can inflate these And as they inflate, you see that they conform to more of a ball configuration than what a standard pillow bag does. So for a bag that's this small, we get a lot more vertical height or height of lift out of a bag like this than we would out of a typical pillow bag type of configuration. Again, like JD mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we're watching those kick-out zones, and if we see articulation in our bags, if we're lifting and you kind of see that waffling out, JD, how are you typically going to manage that from a command perspective? Are you going to continue the lift? How are you going to address that with your crews?
I'm going to tell you to hold. We're going to reassess, make sure things are where we want them to be, and if we need to relocate, we have our cribbing in place. So we can deflate that bag a little bit if we need to position it in a better spot. Maybe since we got that lift, we see something where we can get more of a lift more efficiently. Cribbing's in place, you can deflate a little bit, we can put it in. We can do whatever we want. But if something doesn't look right, it's probably not right. So stop it at that point. I'm going to tell you to hold. You're not going to do anything until you hear from me again on whether or not we're going to lift or relocate or whatever it is we need to do.
Right. Okay. Now, once the lift is attained and we've gotten the victim out, we've accomplished what we need to accomplish, there's also some hazards associated with bringing the load back down. So JD, walk us through the coming down procedure and the things that we're going to go through there communication-wise.
Basically, we're going to reverse what we did going up. It's not the time where you lift a little bit and everybody pulls all the cribbing out and we just bring it down. We're going to bring it down an inch and we're going to pull the cribbing out an inch, same as we're going up. That way, if something does happen, we still have a live load there, and we still have firefighters around it and rescuers. A victim maybe over here being worked on. We want to make sure that we bring that down in a controlled way. This is the point where it's not a rush. This isn't the emergency part. We want to bring it down gradually and in a very safe way.
Okay. So let's go through that sequence and let's talk about that, and you go ahead and give me the commands and I'll follow through on what you're doing there.
Okay, cribbing guys, we'll make sure they're ready to go. It's always a good idea to have a short pike or something like that where they can hook that cribbing and bring it out so they're not reaching underneath the load to bring the cribbing out. Once they're ready to go, I'm going to say down on yellow. You're going to go slowly down on yellow.
Down on yellow.
And I'm really going to base his speed on this on the stabilization part. If they're not being able to keep up with him, he needs to slow down a little bit. We may go down a little bit, hold, start bringing that wedge out. Gradually bring the wedge out, gradually bring the bag down so that we don't have that void space. We don't want a void space between our cribbing and our load. We want to work together coming down so we have it controlled at all times.
One of the other important things that we need to address are the attachment points or the anchor selections that we utilize on the load. So typically speaking, we don't want to use moving parts on the vehicle or the piece of machinery as our lifting points. If we have moving parts, we're going to have to crib or chain or apply components to those moving parts so that they're secured. If we don't do that, then when we go to lift, we'll get a lot of movement and reaction out of the moving part, but the load itself won't move. JD, you got any other tidbits or any rules or parameters that you'll use about structural elements versus non-structural elements? What other things would you want to add to that?
Well, I think you have to look at what has the victim trapped. If they're trapped under a wheel, a tire, for example, and we're having a hard time getting underneath to the point where we could lift the axle, for example, then we need to wrap a chain and attach that suspension to the vehicle and then lift from somewhere else. If not, it's just like jacking your car up. You have to jack your car up a long way before your tire comes off the ground. If we can wrap that chain around the axle or the wheel and tie it into the vehicle, then as soon as we start lifting that vehicle on the point that we picked, the tire's going to come up. So you just kind of have to look at what has them trapped and quickly make that determination of where's my efficient place to lift so we can get this done as quickly as we can and safely as we can.
Great.